Recording in progress.
Ready when you are, your worship.
Good evening and welcome to the special council meeting. It is Tuesday, October the 3rd, 2023, 6:30 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. I would remind council of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Being none noted, brings us to section 3, the 2024-2033 capital budget draft. Report TR 1423 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2024 to 2033 capital budget draft. Lauren, take it away.
Good evening, your worship, members of council. Before you is our 10-year capital budget. The 10-year capital budget includes our most recent A&P, our Ontario Reg 453 water plan, our roads need study, the bridge and culvert study, our facility audit, as well as our master storm sewer assessment plan. In tradition of and standards of previous budgets, we had a budget consultation period which ran from February 3rd up to August 31st, which we also allowed additional comments up into August 26th, and we haven't received any additional comments since publication as well. Just to note that to council. And then on January the 9th, we're going to present the 2024 levy supported operating budget. The methodology of this capital budget really is very similar to the last 9 budgets I prepared, this being my 10th capital budget to the municipality of Van. It really works on the methodology derived both from the 6 above documents, as well as how we navigate a road with Ojibwe and post Ojibwe. However, there's one big difference for this budget over the prior years. It really includes every A&P requirement that we have. So a couple of big things to note. We have big conditions coming up for the water system, some big transfer payments down the road. We potentially have wastewater capacity considerations. So those are big placeholders, but they are items for council consideration. So that is more encompassing of our complete master A&P and our both our asset replacement plan. We are trending up in a historical capital levy, as illustrated since 2010 to 2024. And we are coming out of the post-COVID environment with starting to get normalized capital costs. Couple constraints for council to consider. One, their strategic plan consideration of Project Ojibwe debt elimination in March 2025. And 2, how to fund everything now until March 2025, once the municipality is able to reset and take that debt servicing costs off our books, as well as the substantial large transfers. Again, methodology includes consideration of increasing our capital budget that we have in the past, allocating gas tax and OSIP strategically when needed to be deployed, as well as identifying any infrastructure gaps we have. in trying to find accessible provincial and federal grants. For 2024, right now our tax levy projected is 2.4 million. In 2025, 3.095 million.
Hold the mic closer to you, please.
Sorry about that. So we can go in two directions. I'll let the CAO kind of give some opening remarks and talk about some of the public consultations, comments, and then we can get into each of the departments, 2024 and 2025 capital items.
Thank you, Lauren. So we have a standard capital budget consultation results. These comments were received during the standard consultation period up into the start of August 31st. There are also 5 comments that were included via addendum that are attached to the budget package. These are also included and received on August 31st, later in the day. So they did not make it into the first package, but are included as an addendum. No comments were received after September the 1st. What I will try to do for brevity is cover topics rather than walking through each of the individual comments that were received. So we did receive a number of comments on the lighthouse, and a very topical capital project for the municipality and for council to consider. We do have it in the capital budget as FA08. It's a 2025 item. This was discussed through various CAO staff reports over the last year. This is non-core, and currently in the facilities reserve, there is no extra funds allocated for the lighthouse, outside of maybe $10,000 left over from the stabilization measures earlier this year. We also don't have any secured grant funding or other forms of funding for this project at this time. This is going to be something that council will have to discuss during budget deliberations tonight. We have had some comments about upgrades to surface and linear infrastructure in certain areas of Port Burwell. Upgrades to linear infrastructure, specifically in the area of Libby Street, would be a component of phase 6 of the Port Burwell Stormwater Master Plan, currently in the budget as 2031. Earlier upgrades are not being contemplated at this time. There is a comment about resurfacing Clark Road from Glen Erie south to the Waterfront Trail. This project was pulled from the 2023-32 capital budget at the recommendation of staff and the direction of council. It has not been re-included in the budget at this time. And there is also a comment, just some general comments about Main Street revitalization in Port Burwell and some of the other villages. These are overseen by Elgin County Economic Development and Tourism as a leader in this regard. So this is outside the general portfolio of the municipality. There is a comment about public perception regarding Stratfordville receiving the majority of the funds allocated. This perception is false. The vast majority of recent and upcoming capital projects are in Ward 1, Vienna and Port Burwell. As they have the wastewater treatment plant, and they also have the BAM water system, which, as alluded to by the treasurer, and pending a condition assessment, may require substantial investment over the next 5-year period. Some comments about water sewer rates and costs of the system, just for everyone's background. Water and wastewater rates are based on 5-year studies that ensure operational and life cycle capital costs of both systems are attributed to the users of the system. So these funds are done by empirical study. Another comment about transfer station for garbage disposal. This is something that had come up in previous years, and no transfer station is being contemplated at this time. This would require land acquisition, operation, etc., and it is not included in the budget. Then we had some comments about accessibility upgrades at the beach, specifically speeding up the degree to which we move accessibility mats forward. So these are included in the budget as PR 13, currently a 2027 item. We currently don't have direction from council to move them up to an earlier year. Council may, however, direct this. Some comments about potential further investment and enhancement to either the Vienna Community Park or the Memorial Park in Vienna. So splash pad has been a point of comment, not only this year, but previous years. It isn't something we scoped out in the budget as it's an enhancement to non-core. And for council's information, staff and the treasurer have tried to ensure that with a lot of the core pressures we have coming up in the next few years, particularly after we pay down or pay off the Ojibwa in 2025, if it isn't a non-core project that we've carried over for previous years or a non-core project identified by council or that we are required to do some form of work on, we haven't contemplated any expansion in the non-core portfolio at this time. Pickleball and tennis court in the Vienna Community Park are moving forward. This has been tender and awarded. Anything with respect to a mural on the museum is not being contemplated at this time. And moving down to some further items, swing sets, the playground at the community park, not contemplated at this time in 2024. Decorative improvements, beautification in Burwell and some of the other main streets. Decorative enhancements are not being contemplated at this time. Charging station suggested for 2024, not in the future. This is currently in the budget as a 2029 item. It's PR 06. Currently, we do not have any direction to bring that forward in the budget. Moving down to focusing on eliminating the Ojibwa debt. This is a comment from Marnie Wolf. So we are looking at 1 million plus transfers proposed in 24 and 25. Based on discussions with the treasurer, this will get us to 3.5 million of the 4.05 we require. We may be able to shift some OSIP funding around in 25, or dependent on what council directs with respect to surplus of land potentially will get us to the 4.05 we require. So if it isn't a substantial pay down of what is currently the principal, then we should be able to pay it off. The draft budget is definitely core heavy. There's contemplation about accessibility for voters. And I suspect that over the next few years, we'll be looking at continued reserve transfers for election purposes. These are included in the budget. And from a council information perspective, we expect to report to council in 24 or 25 from the clerk regarding alternative voting methods for the 2026 election. So I suspect we'll be moving to some form of internet, telephone, or something like that, should council direct that information be forthcoming. The large item waste pickup day, this has been continued by council. And consideration of a lighted crosswalk on Plank. Plank is county jurisdiction, so not something within the municipality's purview. Continued improvement of accessibility at the beach, again, is a 2027 item currently. There is a comment about PR 01 being moved to 2032 and being replaced with a quality of place initiative based on community feedback. So we are not considering no new non-core at this time. And PR 01 is included prior to 2032 in case of accelerated wear based upon useful life. So it may be pushed back at a later date. There's comments about the PR 12. PR 12 is the pavilion in the Port Burwell Memorial Park, and removing it and redirecting the funds to paying off the Ojibwa or the lighthouse. So council may direct this. However, it is included in the budget at this time as a standalone item. Staff have not considered removal. There's a comment in here about the upgrading the washrooms at the beach. This is currently in the budget as FA 09. A 2024 start for engineering and 2028 start on construction. It's done over a 2-year period. And the reason why we're looking at 2024 for engineering is to ensure that if a grant does come up in the interim, that we have a set of workable plans that we can move forward with the grant application instead. Again, comments about revitalization would fall under Elgin County Economic Development. Parks and Recreation money should be invested in improvement of parks. Reserves should not be diverted to other projects. So consideration has been given to levy and reserve funding for park improvement. So numerous projects are identified in the budget that utilize one or both. There are some comments in about the canoe launch. The canoe launch was previously about a 2024 item. It is currently in the budget as a 26 item. We have a utility corridor repair that is fairly substantial, that is going to require staff time and effort at a priority. So we have put this in 24 and we've pushed the canoe launch back. It is still in the budget, however. We have had some comments about the SCC as well. The SCC wasn't specifically included in 24 because that time of draft, we were still hopeful that we'd be able to tender and start construction in 2023. At this point, that appears to be unlikely. I would reiterate that the project is scoped and funded 1.46 million from ISIP, and we do have various reserves that have been identified to support any overage at this time. Contemplation of an accessible swimming pool in the Vienna Community Park is also not being contemplated at this time as a further non-core enhancement, as it would require health and safety inspections, staffing, and ongoing maintenance to our non-core portfolio. Consideration for the pier is also as a comment. The pier is identified in the budget as a two-phase. So we'll be looking at engineering in 24, construction in 25. Comments about erosion and risk mitigation. So we do have item PW 33, which involves a study of lakeshore line and dynamic erosion effects. We do have smaller visual assessments that are done on an annual basis along a 5-kilometer stretch of lakeshore line at this time. These are accounted for in development services. Consideration, a comment about bylaw enforcement. Bylaw enforcement is strictly complaint-based. We are not doing proactive bylaw enforcement. There are some comments about general lot upkeep, some form of making taxes more reasonable for businesses to open and the like. So I would identify that items PD 1 and 2 are OP and zoning bylaw reviews. So we would be looking at any sort of planning comments or OP comments at that time. Some comments about taxes as well. Bayham continues to have competitive taxes in comparison to other general Elgin County lower tiers. And I would advise that even though we had a bit of a higher tax rate and nominal levy hit this year, we have our lowest percentage of accounts receivable versus tax levy that Bayham has seen in the last 15 years currently. So even if there is the perception that taxes are high here, that it doesn't appear to be something that is impacting our accounts receivable line, and the treasurer can speak more to that if that comes up as a conversation point. Comments about speeding in Bayham. So speeding is very much the OPP jurisdiction. The contract is with the OPP. This is not something that the municipality oversees directly. This would be something that if residents have issues with speeding, they should be contacting their police service board representative for the east end of Elgin County, which at this time is Mayor Dominique Giguère from Malahat. Comments about social media and the website. So these are forthcoming. The website is in the works. We are looking at an early December date of launch. So Megan has been taking care of this from the clerk's perspective, and staff have been assisting with content. So thank you everyone for that. I expect that we'll be having a social media policy before council in Q4 as well, once we get closer to the website launch. So that covers the comments that were received during the budget consultation. I'll jump to the amendment comments. There's one staff amendment comment and 5 resident. So the first one is that on April 6th from staff, staff received a CAO report regarding the follow-up CAO report 2023 on the Stratfordville community expansion. And it was discussed at that time that the fire cistern be recommended to the 2024 capital budget as a standalone item due to broader community benefit that this installation would provide for fire protection in Stratfordville and area. So that is being included in the discussions. That brings the overall proposed levy to 2.5 instead of 2.4 million for 2024. 5 sets of further resident comments were received. So we had some comments regarding the lighthouse restoration, which have been identified elsewhere tonight. The Stratfordville Hall expansion identified not as a priority, nor is it an emergency, and that funds can be reallocated. So I'm sure that will be part of ongoing discussion now that construction is likely to happen in 2024, which again, re-up some of the upside risk we were trying to mitigate on costs by having a re-estimate done earlier this year. Policing budget, again, is not the direct purview of the municipality. And the boat launch is being pushed to 2024, or 2026 from 2024, as noted. Consideration for Brown Side Road being resurfaced. This is in the budget. It is 2025, $200,000, item PW 32. Also a comment about having a sidewalk in Vienna extended from the south end of Center, going south along Center Street. This is not being considered at this time. We do have a line item in the budget as usual for $100,000 for sidewalks under our sidewalk program. The understanding at this time is that 2024's proposed project would continue to be in Port Burwell. And then 3 comments regarding some non-core expansions, none of which are currently considered within the scope of this budget. So an amphitheater in the Vienna Memorial Park. So again, non-core and not considered as a service enhancement in the 10-year plan at this time. There is consideration for some standalone letters as a marketing tool at the bottom of the Robinson Street turnaround. Again, this is not being considered at this time. And with respect to a few comments regarding further beach enhancement, sand dunes were considered by the Blue Flag Committee in 2022. Recommendation was forwarded to council, and this item was not actioned. Shade structures and washroom enhancements are currently in the budget as items PR 14 and FA 09, and no consideration at this time is being considered for a built-in food booth as part of that expansion, or further pedestrian lighting at the beach. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that covers the comments that were received during the comment period, and I will leave it with you and the treasurer to continue to discussing the budgets functional area by functional area.
All right, thank you very much for the coverage on the comments. Lauren, I think it's a standard practice. You usually take us through this line by line.
So we're gonna start with on the master PDF, page 29, or on the standalone package, page 14. So you guys know the PDF 29. At the top left corner, 14. It'll say general government 2024.
Okay, so you want us on page 14.
I'm trying to keep everyone score home for everybody who's watching.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, your worship. So 2024 general government, we have our traditional liability reserve transfer, our working capital transfer, our standard election reserve transfer. We have our development charges, which is still ongoing, and we have the guarantorship loan reserve transfer for $1 million. That's the 2024 general government. For 2025, there is no items for council to consider tonight for procurement. There are 4 transfers again. We can talk about anything else in general government if you'd like, but none of them are action items that need council direction tonight. So moving down to page 25, fire, 2024. Chemical rescue is in there for 7,500. The radio system reserve for 30,000. Pumper 1 for 550, which council's already approved. Portable radios for 6,000. Bunker gear for 14. And then an additional equipment reserve transfer of 100K because we have another piece of equipment coming up.
Sorry, Lauren, just from our folks online, they say they can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. So for fire 24, we have the technical rescue at 7,500.
You're gonna have to talk louder.
All right, we have the technical rescue at 7,500, the radio system reserve at 30,000. Pumper one at 550, which council has already previously approved for procurement. Portable radios at 6,000, bunker gear at 14. And then we have our fire equipment reserve transfer at 100,000 for upcoming additional fire rolling stock replacement.
Okay, just to note that the pumper one is out of the reserve fund.
It is originally was from levy transfers
Yes.
previous year and it's coming from that reserve.
But it doesn't have an impact on the levy this year.
That is correct, your worship.
That's
For
important to
2024.
note. Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to clarify with the chief that the procurement, are we not over budget on that?
550, so 550 is for the delivery in January.
Your worship. To answer that question, it would be, we're gonna be very close to being right on budget.
Oh.
Rolling stock, as you saw, was $100,000 for future rolling stock. In the last, since I purchased that one vehicle, 550, that'll now cost us 800,000 for that vehicle, the same vehicle. That's how much the increase has gone, 30% per year, roughly.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
all right. So again, setting up for the next piece of apparatus is 100,000 transfer.
Correct.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Also, your worship, with fire, there's a couple years I need to highlight, 25 and 26, so that way council's aware of procurement. And I'll highlight those capital codes in 1 second. Bunker gear is continuing with our standard program. Our SCBA replacement of 210, which is upcoming. So staff will be looking direction for council to begin that process of capital code FD 05. So that way fire chief can start getting the procurement lined up. So that way we're in the queue for 2025. So staff is looking for direction on council directing staff to either start the procurement or bring back a staff report on the costing for FD 05 for 2025 delivery. That's also really carrying 25, 26, and probably a little bit into 27, depending how much hangover we have.
What's the date of the end of the ultimate replacement of the SCBA?
25. It'll be coming in 2024, 2025 is when the tanks start to service the life end. Tank is worth is 15 years, and the packs are generally associated to the tanks.
Okay, but they're all it's even scored out to 2027. FD 05.
Your worship, I do not know how, but apparently there was another batch that were obtained in 2015, which gives us that extra.
Okay,
And that's what I'm going to try to do is, I'm actually going to try to save some packs, keep them on board. The maintenance will be very hard to get on them.
Yep.
But I'm going to keep a couple extra so we can have those for, just in case of emergency.
yep, but that replaces all across the entire platoon.
Both stations.
Both stations.
Both stations.
All right,
Worship.
thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one clarification question. If any of these go over budget, where's the wiggle room? Where does that come out of the general levy? I just want to make sure I understand.
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, if we have any cost overruns in any of the fire equipment, there will be some hangover in the tax levy,
Thank you.
subject to the fire equipment reserves not having any cash in their accounts.
And just as a caveat on that, council would be notified and you would be seeking authorization.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
The only other item in fire to consider tonight for procurement is project code FD 06. That's tanker one replacement for 680. We are looking for direction tonight Fire chief can speak to the reason why, as well as coordinated procurement with other lower tiers.
Your worship. I have recently, in the past 2 weeks, been contacted by 2 other municipalities, lower tier municipalities. They're looking at a tanker somewhere between 25 and 26. We've been speaking with the one manufacturer, and we could be having a savings anywhere from 15 to 20% if we were to go in. And as I said, at our $800,000 at 20%, that's $160,000 each of the lower tiers could be looking at. I would like direction to at least continue with these talks and just to see how much we can save the municipality.
It sounds proactive to me, and Harry, we're looking at a replacement by, did you say 2026?
2026, yes.
All right. It's amazing it takes that long to start in the process. Okay. Yep, thank you.
So, for fire, there's nothing else for council consideration unless there's an item in the remaining sheets they would like. But, I would like to, just note the council, to applaud the chief for bringing that up for the tagging procurement. That's been a big item I've been pushing at the county treasurers meetings for a while now to have collaborative procurement. So the fact that we can tag is, I think you're gonna see a lot of these dynamic procurements coming up in 2 years where we're gonna be working together.
So just to clarify and just to make sure that I fully understand, you'll be looking for authorization to bring back a staff report on that. You're not looking for us to commit to a tanker purchase tonight?
Absolutely not. We're still in the process of talking,
Yep.
and I would not ask for council without a number to give authorization for. I have my next meetings on Friday mornings
Mhm.
with the chiefs and the manufacturer that we're looking at. And I would bring back a staff report for you, Your Worship.
Okay. Thomas?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the direction would be that if we have as part of a motion would be to investigate 2024 procurement for item FD 06 and report back to council. So we can include that as part of a motion.
Concerns? No?
Necessary.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Moving to page 36 for 51 on the PDF, building 2024. We have nothing really coming up in building until we get to 2027 for the building vehicle equipment replacement. And that item will be considered at the time, depending where our shared service agreement is with Malahide. So we kept that just as a placeholder in case we do have to come in with the vehicles for the department.
What year are you looking at for that?
2027.
2027. Okay.
Yes, and just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, that even though this still does fall under the building budget, technically as Malahide provides building services, this would be the bylaw truck. Same truck, just different title.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I was just gonna clarify perhaps how that looks with the shared service with Malahide. Is that, are we splitting cost on how do they use the truck in Bayham when they're in Bayham and then the truck in Malahide when they're in Malahide? Or I understand, thank you, Lauren, for the clarification that it's just a placeholder, but I'm wondering moving forward what those expenses are gonna look like.
So to clarify and let the treasurer jump in, we do provide the service. As part of the service, we would be engaged with Malahide regarding capital replacement of the truck. So it is a placeholder. We don't expect to have to foot the entire bill for the truck, however, and it would be the same vice versa with their building trucks.
Okay.
Right, your worship, moving on.
Just one clear, so 27 is the year of purchasing the truck, possibly.
Probably we would come back in 25, maybe 26, depending on fleet procurement looks like then.
Sure. I'm just looking at your notations for your reserves, post 27.
We're in the red.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. You haven't started rebuilding that reserve. Gonna flip it over to the bylaw and out of the building, or what are you gonna do?
Hmm.
I haven't found the matching proceeds, but I haven't identified the offsetting difference yet. In our operational or our capital for when it comes up. I don't even know if what our commitments will be on said vehicle, but it is
Sure.
in that 10-year rolling average. So there could be an additional $10,000 to $15,000 of tax levy year or other money have to be repurposed for their place.
Okay, but you know what I'm
To top
getting at.
that count.
All I'm getting at was kind of curious that you've used the reserve plus and you haven't started to rebuild it beginning 28. That's all.
Correct.
All right. We'll look for magic mushrooms. Carry on, sir.
It might be an agricultural crop.
It might be.
Moving to 47 or 62 on the PDF for everyone following home. Public Work 2024. First project up Stewart Bridge, PW 24, 75,000. Tunnel line culvert removal, PW 108, 200,000. Pickup, 60,000. Again, this is gonna be part of our annual program where we do public works, water, wastewater, building bylaw. We've had success in the past of doing an annual rolling replacement. GPS survey equipment for 25,000. Then we get to our road construction portfolio for 2024. First one up is Tollgate Road at 400,000. Vienna line at 230. What we call the works, which is the various multiple roads where we do odds and ends of capital rehabilitation improvement.
Mhm.
As well as our gravel program rehabilitation, which has been, those two programs have been ongoing for the last 5 years. Kind of our other portfolio is a mix mash of kind of things you don't see, but they're there. So our sidewalk program, which has been successful through all the hamlets, all the communities, our road sign program annual, our guardrail program, our bridge and culvert inspection program. We're continuing with our roadside brushing, a roads need study, as well as an EMP update for future legislation coming up. Our hill management program, which has been very successful in improving drainage and both in our winter control and then our summer programs. And then obviously we have our machine placeholder time. Two things for council to consider on this worksheet that I would caution, I would highlight if they're keeping score at home. The reserve 2305 road construction reserve, projected year in balance at the end of 2024, 531. I'd highlight that. And I would highlight reserve 2363 OSIP 503. There'll be discussion points later in the night of how those reserves can come into play on a larger picture. Moving on to 2025.
Where you leave that page.
Yeah.
The culvert removal and tunnel line is that 200,000 BAM's share. Is this a shared cost with Tulsamere?
Yes.
So that's,
That's band portion.
so it's a $400,000 project.
Correct.
Wow.
That's, sorry, toll gate, you said?
No, tunnel line,
Oh, tunnel.
right at the top.
Ah, thank you. I knew it was.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Lauren, I think I ask this every year and I ask for clarification every year. Machine time is a credit. Can you explain that?
So machine time is the time that we put back. That we recognize as revenue or offsetting expense that relates to our machine time and supporting the county road maintenance agreement.
That's okay.
Some municipalities use it as a tax revenue summary, some use it as an equipment reserve. Occasionally we use them as either or, the last few years we use it as a tax sundry line, basically an accounting treatment.
Okay.
Thomas.
Yes, Lauren, it's probably smart since we're discussing public works and we usually utilize the gas tax and OSIP under public works to discuss some of those funding options up front while we go through the rest of the budget, just so council's aware of how we can use it either to underwrite further towards the Ojibwa, or we can underwrite further to decrease the tax levy in the next couple of years.
That works with me. I'll do 25, and then I can explain 24 and 25 together.
All right.
So, 25. We've got the tandem, which council has already given direction on procurement. Again, that's how far we have to place orders. I believe that was placed in November of 22, correct, Mr. Olson?
Your worship, members of council, the tandem, as you're aware, very similar to fire services. Are extremely backlogged for orders. Build dates still have not opened up. Again, just a general comment that we have a number of pieces of fleet in public works that will be aging out and coming due. And we are anticipating significant cost increases. However, we are also confident that the canoe program will be beneficial for all of us.
Thank you for that. The 20,000, is that expected recovery of what you're trading in? What's the other?
Equipment, the sale of equipment, trade in or other.
You?
Yeah. Welcome. The only other things before we finish on 25 to know on equipment is in 2026. That will be bringing back to report for PW 35, the grader, and PW 29. So we just need direction to have council direction for a staff report on those two procurements. To see what the market is like currently for tandems and graders, to make sure we're in line for 26. I know it's 2 years off, but we need to make sure that we're in that queue for 26.
Repeat those.
That was
Son.
PW 35 grader and PW 29, and I'll let Ed kind of speak to that kind of process.
Your worship and members of council, yes, similar to the tandem. All of the public works related fleet equipment, whatnot is extremely backlogged. And quite honestly, if we don't get in that time frame, we may be pushed even further, which will inevitably create an increase in the operating budget for additional maintenance to keep these aged out pieces of equipment operating. So what we're looking for is just essentially, to keep on. And we will certainly bring a report forward as we're moving forward. We may hear from the manufacturers that there is a change. We're hopeful that does happen. However, if the past history continues to be an issue as we are moving forward, it's very difficult to get in these build dates. And there may only be a certain number of spots, and they may be taken up by other municipalities across the province.
Okay, we're on a 10-year cycle of replacing this rolling stock.
Your worship, yes, that's correct. Yeah, we are certainly extending the life of equipment where we can. It can be problematic in terms of additional maintenance costs, and we are running into that with a couple of the tandems this year, in fact, to keep things going and get prepared for the winter months.
Okay, Lauren, looking at this rolling stock and replacement, we're looking purely just off the tax levy. We're not contemplating any reserve transfers ahead of time to do this.
That is correct, your worship.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The line item 230, the road construction reserve. So last year, that reserve was like 449,865. This year, it's 531. When it goes up, is that just recoverable from overages,
So.
or is there transfers included there?
So through your worship to deputy mayor, if the reserve goes up from the opening audited position to year end,
Yeah.
A, it's cost savings, or B, any council direction of any surpluses.
Mhm.
In the
Yeah.
situation of the road construction reserve, how you're looking at it estimated for 24, 25, 26, The road construction reserve is left unallocated. Okay. Also in consideration is there's 250,000 of the gas tax left unallocated in 26. And there's OSIP left unallocated as well
Okay.
in 2025. Would remind council, or in 26, we'll go back to 25, is the grader was bought second hand from it was from the CASE program. We bought that in 2012, 2013. So that is getting in that 12 to 15-year range, your worship. We have been very good on trying to push the year of life beyond a traditional 10 to 12 on a lot of assets.
Well, understand, sometimes just because a piece of equipment is old, doesn't mean it's not serviceable, but there comes a point, and I do understand where you start putting more and more remedial dollars into keeping this rolling stock going. And I understand, the cost or the opportunity cost of breakdowns when you need this equipment. I get that. I'm just, putting it out there because the other side of the argument is, well, why are you replacing it if it still works?
To answer that question, your worship, sometimes we brought on a brand new piece and kept that secondary piece that we were gonna replace to handle that small bit of machine hours that we had. Great examples in years past, we did that with the Champion grader. We gave it an extra life. But in that situation, that extra life a year actually cost us more on the rehab than it did just keeping it in our portfolio.
I recall.
So there's a trade-off and there's a trade loss.
Okay. Does anyone have any other observations or concerns or questions so far? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one final clarification question, and it just stems from the comments. The Clark Road, that when that project was pulled, I don't see it in the budget. I'm just wanting to confirm that it's still in good shape and we're not anticipating any issues with that section.
Through your worship, to Deputy Mayor, that this is correct. It was pulled, and as you recall, we took the monies from that project and put it into our gravel program. Staff has no concerns at the present time with that section of Clark.
Thank you for that.
I just don't know whether I want to open the can right now or carry on. We'll revisit, carry on.
Continuing on in 2025, your worship, Brown Road for 200, gravel program for 215, Carson for 300. Continuing with our sidewalk program, our road signs, our guardrails, our roadside and brushing, our hill management, the lakeshore line study for 35,000. We have a placeholder here for the stormwater phase 1C, subject to waiting on hear back on the DMAC program. So, if council has any questions on those projects, let's talk about them. If not, we can segue into how the below reserves and OSIP can work for future tax levies.
Carry on with that discussion.
Okay, so two things to highlight. At the end of 2025, the road construction reserve has a projected 531. But it's fair to say that that number is right around 350 to 420 today. Okay. In addition to that, you have the OSIP reserve right there of 386. However, there is an unincluded reserve transfer in that reserve that hasn't been placed because we're waiting to see the status of the OSIP program reinstatement from the province. Our annual OSIP funding is between 625 and 645 a year. So between those reserves, that puts us at about 1.4 million. That 1.4 million is at the option of council to use $500,000 in 24 and another half in 2025 to keep on with your strategic plan to eliminate Project Ojibwa's debt in 2025. Each of those placeholders of 500K would help bring the projected 2024 levy down from 18.4 to 9.7. It would bring the 2025 down from 21 down to 12.75. And there's some additional options to bring the 2025 levy down. But they'll come out through 2025 staff reports and other initiatives.
Okay. You're taking your numbers off of the 2024 reserve sheets?
2024 and 2025. And the 2025 OSIP does not have the standard funding included because the renewal agreement hasn't come out yet.
All right, so there's no transfer to is what you're getting at.
Correct, Your Worship.
All right, whereas 2024, you're looking at that 630.
That's right.
All right. So the proposal and the federal gas tax one, I missed that one. You were talking about $500,000 in there.
Road construction.
the road
Road construction, all right. Thank you. So using those two. All right,
To your worship, the members of council, what staff effectively want to do, we want to keep all the 2024 and 2025 capital works equipment, road infrastructure, and soft infrastructure on the board. We do not want to remove, we do not want to defer, and we do not want to eliminate.
Mhm.
It is imperative that we continue with our road infrastructure spending. However, to effectively utilize those reserves and those specific reserve accounts, this would alleviate some tax capital pressure, as well as keeping with council's strategic plan initiative of debt elimination of Project Ojibwa.
so both the road construction reserve and OSIP reserve are eligible to be used for that purpose?
So what would happen, your worship, in 2024, Stewart Bridge, Tunnel Line, Culvert, and the Gravel Works program would be repurposed to OSIP.
I see, and using the levy off of those, okay. I get it, I get it.
And in 2025, your worship, we would be considering the gravel program and Carson for a similar situation.
Right. Okay. Council, understand, get that? Yep, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So in the event of an overage, and if we've allocated some of those reserves elsewhere, will we still have maneuverable room?
If you only use the OSIF and the unallocated OSIF, you would still have the road construction reserve as a placeholder of safety. But I did caution council that we anticipate some cost overruns this year.
Right,
So that projected number in 2024 needs to come down by about 170,000.
supplementary?
Yep.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I like the idea. I just want to make sure that if there is that overage, which you're projecting for next year of 170, where are you taking that
100
out of the construction reserve then?
170 in 2023.
Oh, for this year. Okay, thank you. Okay,
And
Okay.
council will see that when the Q3 report comes in the second meeting in October. Why we're projecting that kind of position.
okay.
I also remind council in previous years when we had surpluses, we filled the entire road construction reserve up.
This is one of those years to draw back,
Right.
okay? And I, though it's not palatable, or my first choice, we run into that proverbial, position. Well, there is debt capacity, but that's contrary to what we're trying to achieve here. Okay,
100%, yeah.
And I would caution council considering debt capacity with the upcoming placeholders in water and wastewater,
Mhm.
that'll be potentially regulated and legislated on us.
Absolutely. I only bring it up just, to provide some comfort level there that, we're not totally exposing ourselves. But this is an attempt to try to eliminate and dig ourselves out of a hole.
We're not deferring our capital works,
No.
we're not deferring our AMP, we're not deferring our capital programs. It's a situation of moving the tax levy to those specific accounts, spending the funds, which what they're meant for, on roads, on infrastructure, on eligible programs, which these are, and repurpose that capital levy to eliminate the debt.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Everybody okay so far? Counselor Emerson. You're still muted, sir.
No, hang on, there. Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we want to take the surplus and roads capital budget and direct it to Ojibwe debt? That's the question at hand? Is that? I'm not 100% clear on what Lauren's asking, actually.
Yes.
Through your worship.
Thomas first.
I'll try to cover this. Lauren, you can tell me if I'm off base, but basically what Lauren is proposing is that a few of the identified public works lines in 2024 and 2025, instead of being levy, we could use OSIF and the road construction reserve to ensure that our capital program continues forward as planned. Then essentially we're freeing up about $500,000 in each of those years if we need to use that levy space to finish paying off the Ojibwa. Now it's expected that what we project out is about 550,000 that we have yet to account for. And what Lauren has identified in these 2 years is about $1 million worth of work. So we wouldn't have to allocate in full. We'd only have to use about half of that. So about 500,000, 550 over the 2 years. That gives us a little bit of wiggle room in that if we decide to use that amount of money from the OSIF and from the road construction reserve, we can use the rest to underwrite a levy and decrease the nominal levy and tax rates for those 2 years to recognize that, you know, obviously they're a bit higher because we have to pay off the Ojibwa debt before it renews. That's the rationale behind it. Lauren, did I cover that fair?
You did.
Okay, does that clear it up for you, Counselor Emerson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess so, but why do we have to speak to it at this point? That's what I don't understand. If there's a reserve capacity, can't we look at that at the time we're paying that loan? Like,
What they're proposing is simply that the construction reserve and OSIP are eligible to be used for these projects which were already identified on the levy. So
Right.
substituting the levy using the reserve accounts and then taking those levy dollars and essentially if you will, unrestricted, yes, for eventual debt write-down. They're looking to find $500,000 in 24 and $500,000 in 25 moving forward.
Okay.
That's what it's for. It's being a little creative on finance.
I understand. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Yep, no problem. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Moving on.
We can talk about anything else in public works, your worship, if anyone else has any questions. Or if there's any item of consideration, or where does this leave our reserves at the beginning of January 2026, or how does this go? We can even discuss that. I would remind council that if we're able to eliminate the entire debt, we have now freed 1.45 million. I repeat, 1.45 million in 2024 and 2025 off our nominal levy in 26.
Yep.
And took away that future debt servicing bond.
Understood, and I believe that's the ultimate goal
Mhm.
when we started out. That's what we're looking for.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, Lauren, the worksheets that you have here, 2026, does not reflect the plan that you proposed, does it? The reserves at the, on 2026.
Through your worship, if council is amenable to this plan, we can leave this budget as presented. And then when we bring forward the operating, do the amendments when we have the confirming bylaw and the capital bylaw then.
So we'll see what those reserves are going to look like going ahead.
I'm projecting
Yeah.
to get our operating budget today. But I need another month or two to get a better picture on what our
All right,
inflationary and cost pressures or points will be.
absolutely. Well, we're at the capital side right now. Yes, Lauren, or excuse me, Thomas.
Just to confirm, Mr. Mayor, for council and for everyone watching that, if we do decide to change the funding allocation for a project such as Tunnel Line or Stewart or the gravel program moving forward or Carson in 2025, and it's outside of budget approval, it would come forward to council as a staff report requesting direction to amend that funding strategy going forward. The entire point of bringing it forward now is to advise council that we do have these mechanisms coming forward and that we can utilize those over the next 18 months or so to ensure that we're in a position in March to execute our goal.
Absolutely. Okay,
Strategic deployment, your worship.
I get that and I like strategy. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I'm gonna bop back for just one second. Under the general government, under that umbrella, there, it shows as a placeholder, the Ojibwa Reserve at 3.5 million closing balance. It moves forward from 2026 all the way. Is that just a formality then?
Through your worship, Deputy Mayor, until council gives me direction to eliminate debt, that stays there.
Okay, so the reserve balance stays there until direction is provided. Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. I apologize for bopping
No
back.
worries, but if you also look at the observation of it, there are no transfers in or out.
Right,
Okay.
that's why I was
That's
trying to
Why
clarify.
it's
Yeah,
sitting there's.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and just to confirm again, just like for fire, there will be, you're looking for authorization tonight to bring back staff reports for the grader and tandem for the 2026 purchase, right?
That is correct, your worship.
Okay. And I'm comfortable and good so far.
Okay,
I don't see any worried looks so far. Okay,
All right.
we've been at it for an hour. Does anyone need a break? Recharge your coffee cup or carry on?
Yeah, it's a break. 5.
5 minutes.
I know it is.
Welcome back. 5 minutes right on. Carry on, please, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, your worship. Moving into water 2024. We have our standard equipment for Richmond, annual program that we've been continued. Our water financial plan, which is mandated, I remind council, is mandated. For 2024 for water rates for both for the BAM system, and the Richmond system, as well as we have the Richmond well review. Okay, and these are standard capital expenses we've had over the course of these assets.
Okay, so the financial plan, okay, it's taken together, the water wastewater financial plan. All right. And you're allocating it all to the financial plan of the water for 35?
So that.
A portion comes from the water reserve, portion comes from wastewater reserves.
But the way it looks here, it's 35,000 from the water reserve.
Clerical area worship.
Thank you. So what should it be?
It should be 17.5.
17.5 instead of
Thank you.
35. Thank you. Sounds better to me. And that covers the 2 water systems. Thank you. And the balance would be on the wastewater side.
Correct, your worship.
Thank you.
Lauren, just for a clarification, maybe jumping ahead to page 69 in the master. That would be wastewater 2024. I don't see a corresponding item there, so we'll have to move that 17.5 over.
Your worship, we'd have to make W03 capital item in that budget as well,
Yes.
Okay.
for 17,500.
Oh, water.
Thank you. That's the rate study.
That is correct, your worship.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification on that financial plan, if I may. Because it renews every 5 years. I wonder if that plan does include upgrades to the system in terms of like financial implications, because that's a placeholder coming up, correct?
Through your worship, the water financial and the water wastewater plan covers both the system legacy costs as well as the operational sustainability of the operations. So we would be providing Watsons and Associates for 10-year capital, as well as any capital pressure points, as well as any asset replacements that need to be considered for reserve transfers.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So that's the 24 for water. Oh, you got it? Other questions on 24? Or are we just looking ahead for 25 and up?
Through you,
Please.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, I am bumping ahead, but I think we've covered that. I'm assuming for 2028. And I know it's grant dependent, 15 million. Is that is that projected growth then? Is that what that placeholder is for?
That item is the Port Burwell secondary upgrade.
Mhm.
We expect a condition assessment later this year. We have it 5 years out, recognizing that in discussion with manager of capital projects and with Malahide, we're probably looking at a 5-year time horizon. It is a grant at this point in time, as we do expect to be looking for upper level support on this. With the Ojibwa paid off at current interest rates, our debt carrying capacity is 22 million maxed out. So 15 million of that towards one project is a substantial amount. Without grant funding, it will have to be debt. But it is for the Port Burwell secondary system.
Thank you.
All good.
Your worship, for water for 2025 is booster upgrades, but we have no consideration this time requesting direction for staff report for procurement. Ed's advised that some of the water supplies have been better, so we'll definitely look for direction Probably the middle of 24, if something changes on the booster upgrade equipment procurement.
260.
Was there any other questions? I know Deputy Mayor highlighted the system transfer requirements in the
2028, yes.
Is there any other questions in water that council has?
The replacement of the vac unit, I assume it's cost shared between 2 departments or 3?
3 departments, your worship, portion of water, portion wastewater, and portion of public works.
So you're telling me she's just shy of 150,000 for that?
The back?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, just like the pickup truck between the 2.
I
Water,
would remind
wastewater.
council, just like as CEO Thayer mentioned, that 15 million has to strategically be available for debt servicing, because that'll be the thing that will be asked upon us to provide our portion of debt servicing. So I very much caution council of how much our ARL capacity has already pre-slotted coming up.
Same thing with, you look at 2029, you've got a water financial plan in there, which probably should be reallocated. So it'd be another, you've got it at 35, so for a placeholder, another 17.5 in here. All right,
I'll make the amendments to W03.
yeah. Everyone with me on that, page 63? Okay. Gotta replace water meters in 2030. They that old already? Okay,
Continue on, your worship, moving to wastewater 2024, PDF 84, people keeping score at home, or 69 on the master document. So 2024, we have system equipment, again, continuation of the program that we've continued for the last 4 years, of course, main program, the manhole rehab program, which we've continued, the switch upgrade program we continue, and then we also have the Eden pump station upgrade. Those are all reserve funded. As council is cognizant of that, we have a wastewater development charge that specifically is done for system expansion, not rehabilitation. Repeat, expansion, not rehab. So each of those assets that come up in the wastewater, we look at them, whether they expand capacity or just continue to maintain capacity. If there's any questions on 24,
yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to reiterate. So the Eden upgrade. It technically is an expansion, so will any of that upgrade be recoverable through development charges?
through your mayor, deputy mayor, a portion will be rehab and a portion will be expansion. But I do not have the engineer report, and at the time of budget completion, we did not know what percentage was, whether it was 80-20 or 60-40. But as I discussed this with manager of public works at Rolson, every time that we're looking at procurement on a go for it, we have to identify what is rehab versus expansion, because expansion is DC eligible.
Supplementary.
Deputy Mayor? Yeah.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So just to confirm, then there may be some recoverable funding coming in from DC charges. Well, we're not exactly sure how much, but that will show up.
We have, so to answer the deputy mayor, we have DCs coming in, every time we have a building permit that's in a water wastewater service area. The portion that relates to the 250 that is DC versus rehab, we don't have that identified yet.
Okay.
Once we know some system reports back on that system, then we can identify how the funding goes.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, in the future, if we ever have anything like this where we don't know the percentage, I will update council on our quarterly reports, once we're spending money, how much is rehab versus DC. I will give that as an additional note for each of the projects. So that way you guys are cognizant of, is it being reserve funded or is it being the DC account funded? So I will add that to my new quarterly reports, 2024.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So in future budgets, then moving forward, like I see you have a DC line, but it's always zero. But next year, it's gonna reflect how much we've collected.
If we're able
And-
to identify the capital works and the proportion amount that's DC, it'll be in that placeholder.
Okay, thank you.
As well as the DC reserve balances will be added to next year's capital bottom of water and the wastewater sheet, so that way you guys can see where we're at for DC envelope funding.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else under the wastewater that you want to bring to our attention?
Well, I think it's cognizant that we look at. I'm pulling up the worksheet right now, your worship, just bear with me for a second. 2028, or actually 2027. Wastewater treatment plant, environmental assessment, wastewater treat plant engineering. And Big Daddy, the wastewater treatment plant, 15 million in 2030.
Right.
The simplest way to describe this to council and the public listening at home, it's like a stadium. You have a stadium that seats 2,000 people. Once you fill the stadium up, you can't sell any more tickets. If we have new people that want to be season ticket holders, we have to build a bigger stadium.
Nice, but it's 2029, you've got the schedule, right?
And 30.
And 30, so we're talking
30.
30 million?
30 million?
And
That's-
30,
I wanted that. I wanted the confirmation.
it's a big stadium, your worship.
Yeah,
These people said. We do have the manager of capital projects here to answer any questions on this. We'll likely be coming back to council in 2024 for some direction to do some high level procurement, probably through an RFP process to start getting some information about the technology and need that we'd have to look at for plant expansion. That's something that Ed and I have discussed recently. So if there's any questions about the expansion, what that may entail, he is here for any questions or comments.
Looks like this program is to begin in 26
Mhm.
with land acquisition. I assume we're going to need to start talking to somebody shortly. All right. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. That was my question to staff was with current projected growth. Are we going to be okay waiting until 2030,
So
2029, I guess, technically?
through you, Mr. Mayor to council, if this was this time last year before development dropped off in 2023, I would have said yes, but it would be close. Now I'm more confident in saying, yes, we should be okay if we start the discussion in 25, 26, and we're moving forward in 29 and 30. We haven't had the development or building permits coming in as we expected, which is meaning that the capacity that is currently available is being used up slower than expected when we had the discussion around capacity in December of last year. So we think the timelines at this point in time are reasonable, but they are a few years out. So if those have to be adjusted, then we do have the ability to do so.
It is illustrative through the capital budget when you start looking at these things and strategically how they are placed and where we have to go to get there. All right, so that's particularly why we're doing this 10-year plan. And this is one of those illustrative factors right there. There are other pieces of the puzzle out there that really aren't germane to this particular budget discussion, but there are economic drivers and groups getting together, thinking about from a regional perspective on how we're going to try to capture some of the investment that's going to be going on in the region. And that is where I'm thinking
BAM has an iron in the fire to try to capture some of the much needed investment dollars that we are going to need for down the road investment. Okay? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for staff. I see that it is clearly grant dependent, or it's showing here as a grant. How these projects are massive. How successful are municipalities in actually getting grants to cover these large multi-year projects?
Through your worship, Deputy Mayor, I would look at 3 points. We have substantial economic development coming up in Elgin County. We have substantial economic development happening in Elgin County. The province will play a partner in this. The federal government will play a partner in this. This expansion would also be DC eligible. We have that portion. However, we would need federal and provincial support. However, there is initiatives from the federal government on housing expansion. And we need help.
Yeah, just to follow the treasurer's point, they're noted as grant dependent because, as I noted earlier, our total debt capacity, if we have nothing being utilized, is $22 million. And you'll note that these projects this is projected at 30 million, and this would come likely after we have to allocate 15 million into debt for the water system. And obviously we still have our DMAP that's outstanding at this time. So those 4 phases, the municipality's portion is 3 and change. So there's a lot that we would have to float before even getting to this stage. I expect that if we do run into a situation where we have to expand the plant, we will be reaching out to upper levels of government for any sort of support, or hopefully another grant opportunity comes up through a green stream application or clean water, wastewater, or something like that, that we can utilize some of those funds as standalone or stackable grants to fund a project of this scope. So since a lot of those are unknown at this time, it's all under grants for the time being.
Placeholder.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But again, it's illustrative of need of what smaller municipalities like ours has. We can't do this alone. All right. Anything else on wastewater? We highlighted the big ticket items for us. Thank you. Ready to move on? Parks and Rec.
Thanks, your worship. Page 80, PDF 95 on the master. Parks and Rec 2024, we've got the Port Burwell Ball Diamond, PRO 5, 200K. We've got the East Pier rehab for 50K and the rail trail work at 70K.
What are the rail train works? Is that rail trail?
Rail
Yeah.
trail.
What is that? Is that the piece over here at the Eden Line or Maple Grove?
Yes, that's the projected municipal portion at this time for the utility corridor.
Thank you. Again, that's just BAM's share.
That's correct.
Four. Hold on. Is this over 2 years or 1 year?
Mr. Mayor, it should be over 1 year.
All right, I think I've got it straightened out. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor,
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The East Pier rehabilitation, can you walk me through that? What is what is recommended with that? That's the portion.
I believe we do have Steve on the line if Steve is able to comment.
Are we talking about 2024 or
Correct,
25,
yes, 2024.
2024 is just the engineering?
2025 is the 275.
Yeah, I can speak on that, your worship. Just for clarification to Deputy Mayor, that is the engineering for the north end of the pier. From the current concrete deck. The proposed change is for this north end, which is currently asphalt. And it'll also address the edges along the pier, as it's currently there, all the rebar along there is exposed. So starting off this year in prep for 2025 would be the engineering only.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I saw it twice and I was just wanting to, thank you.
When they go to do the work, Steve, in 25, then you're talking about of course, covering that rebar on the edge. Is there gonna be required any in-water work or?
Through you, your worship. I believe there's going to be some edge work for sure. If you guys remember the resurfacing of the south section, there was currently a barge on site for quite a while. However, when the engineer report, he will have to do some studies on the piers below and the weight capacity. I have talked high level with him on what's involved in the engineer study. This is a high level pricing for the engineering at this time, but that's kind of what's involved. So I think we're going to be into the edge of the water a little bit. There could be a time restriction for this, which generally would be after July 15th of 2025, I guess, for the construction to meet the ministry regulations.
Right, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment if I could. I'm wondering, Steve, if I know next year, and the reason that we have pushed the canoe launch in Vienna is more for staffing requirements for that utility corridor. I'm wondering if there's any room in 2025 that we might be able to bump that project up.
Through your worship, Deputy Mayor. Ultimately, that's council's decision. If that's something that you guys would like to look at, we're here to entertain it.
As a placeholder right at the moment, it's still in the budget. And I know it's looking at 2026. I would assume that should we want, we can reallocate that in year. Providing the resources are available. Like we've got a year to worry, to think about it.
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
that's satisfactory?
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I just, it isn't going to impact the actual costing. It's more the staff time that we're looking at. So because it's coming out of that
Yes.
reserve fund. So yeah, I would just like to recommend that we revisit that sooner rather than later. That's
Understood.
something we have discussed, and we know that it just becomes a safety issue with where they're actually launching the canoes right now over the bridge there. It gets very congested and it's very busy. So I just think it's something that we should consider sooner rather than later. That's just my thought.
Oh, agreed, and I appreciate that. I guess, to the notion of impacting costing, depending upon staffing, resources and availability, it might have that kind of an impact. If I look at that program was 283, sorry.
Yep.
The worksheet here.
PRO3, yep.
So that one includes not only just the launch, but also line parking enhancement. So there's, yeah. Well, let's see how things turn out. Yes, Susan.
Thank you.
Sorry,
This-
Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. I'm Susan as well.
Hmm.
For myself, I would like to see the Moby mat, or I know you can't really call them Moby mats,
How about
but
accessibility?
accessibility. And I know we have some reports due to let us know what's more feasible. But anything we can do to pull that ahead, I would like to see, because it's been on the budget for years now and keeps getting pushed out. So
Yes, Thomas, you have a comment to that?
Yes, just to clarify for council, the outstanding reports have already been provided to council and received. They were provided by the manager of Public Works, I believe, last council meeting.
okay, sorry, I thought there was still one more coming.
No, and
I
I
wasn't here at that meeting.
think that has for several years been sitting at the 2027 placement.
We haven't moved it since I've been here, so it's been there at least 3 years now.
I've talked about pulling it forward every year and it's been just kind of left.
Counselor Emerson.
Yeah, further to comments from the deputy mayor and from Councillor Chilcott. We do have money in the reserve fund for Vienna, and we should be kind of pushing ahead with that kayak launch because it is an economic driver for the area. Canoe, kayak, wash, whatever you want. And the Moby mat or the accessibility mats, I don't know, we might have to take a sacrifice or something because that's the one thing that's consistently asked for. So on both those points, I'd have to agree with my counterparts there, not counterparts, but whatever.
Mr. Treasurer.
Through your worship to Councilor Chilcott, Councilor Emerson and Deputy Mayor. It hasn't been brought forward because it's grant dependent. So unless we're able to identify a grant to match it, it'll be a levy item for the accessible mats.
I was gonna say, you're speaking to the accessibility.
Correct. The other one is reserved.
Thanks, Lauren.
So again, the placeholder for the canoe launch is 26, but there is opportunity, it can be brought forward since it is a reserve fund. All right. Do you want to change its position in the budget at this time, or do you want to deal with it as it comes? Councilor Chilcott.
So you're speaking the launch or you?
The launch, the accessibility maps, council can do whatever it wants, but what I'm getting at is, it's identified as grant dependent at the moment. If the appropriate grant is identified, then you can move it in and away you go. The other one is already from a reserve account. And the reason it was put on 26 is for staff availability. Recognizing that you've got some bigger construction items that need to be addressed 24, possibly 25. That's why it was put there. If there is, I guess, a freeing up of resources, it could be moved in at any time. Would I be correct in suggesting that?
To Mr. Adams' question.
It's a Mr. Adams question. I was looking to the manager of Public Works or of capital as well. Not gonna answer that one. Steve, should staffing resources become available, you got a couple of weeks to do it. Could this be moved in on short notice? See, there's also some land prep, there's some trailers and obstacles that need to be removed. All right, different things. It's gonna take a little bit of time.
Yeah, through you, oh,
I'm sorry, Steve first.
sorry about that. No, just to answer that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if this is a project council wishes to, obviously I'd jump on this because there is some ministry approval along with this. Kind of, I think back when we identified it, I had reached out to the local CA, and they were on board. There is no permit, considering still need a permit for it, and they still may have conditions on that permit. So, for right now to say that it's going to be done for kayak canoe season, we maybe also like the pier push till out of spawning season, which is after July 15th to work on this, being on the water's edge. So I just keep that in consideration. However, if council wishes to pull this ahead, I think staff can get it done.
Deputy Mayor,
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I would put the motion forward then that we bring it up to 2025.
do you want to do the works in 2025 or try to do it in 2024 so it's available for the 25 season? I guess that's what, all I'm trying to do is keep it as flexible as we can. but-
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression that 2024 focus was the utility corridor. That's gonna be staff heavy, so I'm if it, without putting undue stress on the Public Works Department, but I would motion that we do bring it forward if possible this year, if not 2025.
Lauren, you have a comment to that?
I think it's kind of a moot point, your worship of council. We have the reserve money there.
Yeah.
It's availability of labor. There's gonna
Okay.
be a process that Steve's indicated with the ministry.
Yeah.
Might be best just put it into a staff motion for a request for report. And then Steve can identify a timeline, the duration of what our timeline, what our window could do.
That seems more reasonable.
That's reasonable.
Counselor Emerson, you had your hand up before Steve. But of course, you want to be unmuted when you,
Steve can go ahead through you, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yeah, just to clarify a couple things, back to Deputy Mayor's comment. The rail corridor is a shared project with Tilsonburg. This project, the undertaking of this project will be tendered out due to the size. Municipal staff do not have the equipment to dig this culvert in just because of the depth and the size of the project. So other than manager and supervisor time with the contractor, Public Works staff will still be available, utilizing our other capital and maintenance projects throughout the year.
okay. So would it be what he's suggesting and what the treasurer's suggesting is have staff come back and report on the feasibility and when they can get this done. But I think council is suggesting they want to get this canoe launch done sooner rather than later. So is council comfortable with leaving it with staff to bring us a report on how to do this? Thomas?
Just a quick comment, just so we can more efficient with how we bring staff reports forward in identifying what Steve has suggested is some capacity for this project in 2024. We could entertain keeping it in 2024, and if upon further review, for whatever reason, whether we can't get the proper approvals through the ministry or the C of A and the CA, we have to push it back to 25. That might be the better option. That way the staff report comes forward if necessary instead of by necessity. And it makes the process a little more efficient for staff. So if that's amenable, then we can just include it in 2024.
What's the code on that?
So that would be your.
ER 03.
And to move PR 03 from 2026 to 2024
Thank you.
for $60,000 for the reserve fund at the end of the project.
Well, it doesn't affect the levy. It should, it's moving the line item up on your asset management.
It has no effect on the levy, your worship.
No.
The only thing I would take in consideration in the Parks and Recs for 2024 and 2025, we have 2 projects which are tax levy, and then we have 5 projects which are tax levy in 2025. Staff will be fiercely looking for what's called non-core soft grants, under 200K kind of grants where we can get some of these things off. Obviously, the great one to be hit would be the East Pier rehab or one of the pavilions or other, to see if we can line up the grant that we can take some of that burden off the levy or repurpose funds. Which we have done in the past, for some of those programs like the Sugar Council.
All right, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I will reiterate what Counselor Chilcott brought up earlier, when we're looking for accessibility grants, is the beach accessibility one of our priorities when we're applying for those grants?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy mayor, it is a priority, but is not more of a priority than anything legislated. So beach accessibility mats, for instance, is a level of service over and above what we are legislated to provide. We have been looking over the last year or so for grants for upgrades to public facing facilities for 2025. So the Marine Museum, for instance, that would take priority for one of these grant applications. Now, once that date passes, we can start looking at some of these other non-core service level enhancement projects.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
Counselor Emerson.
Just in a more general sense than to expand on that question brought forward by Deputy Mayor. Is there a staff order of priority for non-core asset development? Or should there be?
I don't believe there is a established priority on non-core that I'm aware of.
We don't have anything specific for how we establish priority for non-core assets unless there is an upgrade or some form of maintenance that is required under legislation or for health and safety purposes to a piece of non-core infrastructure. Main priority that we adhere to now is what is identified in our AMP versus as core versus what is identified as non-core, with core coming first. Generally speaking, if we have a larger grant application that comes in and it's non-core, we'll bring some options forward to council to see if council is interested in one option over the other, but staff don't have a specific hierarchy laid out at this time.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The playground equipment placeholders that are pretty much every year, starting in 2028. Yes. Moving forward, and they're identified in the body. I see here it is grant dependent, but are they end of life requirements? Are they municipal, like, is it mandatory that they are replaced, or is this just a placeholder in the budget?
So it's end of life plus renewal, and then Mr. Adams answer the other two questions.
Okay, thank you.
No, through your worship, the deputy mayor, Lauren was on that. Those were placeholders for end of life. Ideally, looking at that and looking ahead, I've reached out to playground equipment suppliers, to playground equipment assessment consultants. And ideally, I think if we move forward, get a little closer, I think an assessment on these playgrounds would be necessary. Based on what we have now, I think the end of life might be looking, we have pretty good equipment out there. There is some upgrading that needs to happen. I think looking ahead a little bit, we may be able to look into more accessibility options for the existing playground. I think that would be the direction we'll be pushed in, other than minor repairs and outside. Some of the equipment, the rotating equipment does come to end of life. So I think a little bit more enhanced assessment on these play equipment will be needed prior to this these final dates.
Okay.
Supplementary?
Yep.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So Steve, when it shows that it's grant dependent, does that, there is no budget for any of those upgrades, but technically they aren't mandatory, is just so that I understand that correctly.
That is correct. There could be upgrades to them. For instance, the material underneath the play equipment. There's a lot of talk about there'll be a regulated material to be used. However, at this time, we have no obligation to replace those.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is that it for Parks and Rec?
No, before,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can we actually, we never really did say definitely if we were moving the canoe kayak lodge up a year. Can we definitely do that?
It's captured in the overall, Megan's got that noted for the overall, resolution at the end,
Okay. Great.
okay? Gonna find out. Okay, moving on then.
Continue your worship facility 2024, 106 on the PDF, 91 on the master PDF. So keeping track at home. All right, so first one on Public Works HVAC heat tubes, 100,000, gain end of life. Public Works Library washroom, 20,000 out of the facility reserve,
I assume that's Port Burwell.
correct?
Now, just a question on that. When we were on the tour, was there some talk about it may not be required because of volume?
Steve has been looking into this a little bit, as have I, because of the size of the library, being barely 500 square feet with one washroom already. It may be exempt from having to be further expanded because of the amount of space it would end up taking up in the facility. We're still looking into that. Unless Steve has information that I don't have at this point in time, we would recommend that it be kept in the budget as a placeholder at this time in case we have to do the work.
Absolutely, and it's reserve fund dependent anyway, so no impact on the levy. All right, thank you.
Next one is the Port Borough Beach washroom expansion.
That's the engineering.
Yes.
And that is design your worship, so we have it ready to go
Mhm.
when grants line up. Big thing is having shovel-ready stuff ready. This is one of those initiatives. Facility audit, 35,000, and then Marine Museum accessible washrooms, as we discussed about previously, for 60,000. As you'll note, the facility reserves are able to draw it down. And the other two reserves are almost empty. And the museum general will be emptied out on its portion that it's able to fund from Marine Museum. The net levy impact for facilities in 2024 is 259,347. So that's the portion of capital that's funding for facilities. Anyone has any questions on 24? We can put a pin there. Otherwise, we can move into 25. Anyone have any 24 questions?
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious as to why the SEC information is not in here.
It's through your worship, Deputy Mayor. At the time of publication, the SEC was expected to be going out to tender in 2023. With a delay, it's not going to be 24. I'll let Thomas kind of speak to more of that.
Yeah, nothing more to add at this point in time. Lauren's covered the bases. That's why it hasn't been included yet. The works identified for the SEC are grant facility reserve, and then the cistern is 2024 fire department capital because of broader community benefit. There's also a component in there from the Parks Reserve for a portion of the accessible walkway, and the Old Chapel parking lot will be road construction reserve should the project ultimately move forward.
Supplementary.
Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm then that will come back as, will that come back to us? Will that show moving forward? If we approve the budget today, will it be an addendum to identify that? or no?
It was identified in 2023.
Okay, so, okay, thank you. Yep, just wanting to clarify.
Am I correct? It was identified and approved in 2023 or for the 2023 budget.
It's a 23 budget, correct, your worship?
Yes.
And unless it doesn't happen in 23, then it would be not on this budget.
Right.
No, no, that didn't help, Lauren. It was approved to happen in 2023. It didn't
Correct.
happen in 23. We're now in 24. We're looking for 2024.
What I think what Deputy
Will it
Mayor
just
is
be
saying-
moved ahead?
Yes, it'd be a
But
24
it's already
capital.
been approved.
Yes, so it's a 24
Yeah.
capital production expansion or expense. Are you asking whether I'm gonna come back with an amended sheet and worksheets? The answer would be no, unless something changed in the scope of the project. Or costing or something.
Lauren, just to clarify, if it is a 2024 project and construction is occurring in 2024, we should include it in the budget that's ultimately published.
Agreed, it would be amended in.
All right.
Perfect, yeah,
Okay.
that's all in, there it is. Right, it's amended in if, sorry, supplementary through you, Mr. Mayor, so it's just, it's amended in the event that it doesn't happen in 2023. Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Continuing on facilities 2025. Stratfordville, parking lot, 40,000. Marine Museum parking lot, 60,000. And the Portboro Lighthouse for 1.5, 250. Right now, that Marine Museum, the lighthouse is in the grant line until we're able to identify the funding strategy on it.
Okay. Thomas.
Just a quick point for council's information on the lighthouse. So I've been in discussion with the heritage consultant on this one. There have been a couple of questions floating around about how long we can leave the stabilization measures on, what that does for stability, what that does for ongoing deterioration. The building will continue to deteriorate. It isn't weatherproof. It isn't watertight. So the structural issues will continue to worsen. And the stabilization measures are there really as a temporary public safety measure. Essentially, the crux of the information that I have is that the project should continue sooner rather than later. And while it might be too early in 2024, we think 2025 is reasonable considering the agreement we have in place with the adjacent landowner. We do have to identify at some point in time how that is going to be funded. Because as far as non-core projects go, this is pretty well as close to a need that we have in our portfolio. So there has to be a way to fund that, whether it's debt or repurposing a grant or community fundraising or whatever that happens to be, or some combination thereof. We have to have that discussion sooner rather than later.
Yep, thank you for that. Twenty 26 Port Burwell Storage Yard. Down there beside the park, correct? Is that what we're talking about? $50,000 line item. FA05.
That's the reason.
That
70.
Yes, that I believe, Steve, that's a new public works. It's off of, I want to say Homer, isn't it? Just to the south there of the park on the top of the hill in Burwell.
Yeah, through your worship, this is the little triangle adjacent to the outfield of the Ball Diamond.
Right.
Staff currently utilizes that parking lot to dump some material. We have a few different materials there. So this was ultimately put in there to identify that, to more or less barrier off that area. give a cleaner look there, maybe put some stalls for our material when our machines are down there. And then possibly add some space behind the ball diamond, possibly a gravel for additional parking for the park itself or the ball game. So that was the original design on proposal for this.
All right, thank you for that. Regarding facilities 2028, FA 12. Generator replacement. What's the life expectancy on these units?
Through your worship, I could kind of touch on that. That's kind of the I guess it's it's part of the best practice, the Canadian National Guide for municipal infrastructure, and kind of where we get our prices for the pickup trucks. I know you guys were discussing the grader and the machinery. This is the same portfolio for generators. So if it's needed, it's a placeholder at the time. I'm not 100% sure right now when that was installed. However, I think an assessment closer to the time will determine if it needs to be replaced or not.
All right, well, thank you for that. It's just rather curious to stand by a generator. I know it doesn't get used very often, thank God. But if we're getting 15 years out of a road grader, right? But anyway, I was just curious. So it's a placeholder, but hopefully it's not going to be needed 2028. It just seems incredible to me.
Yeah, we have these, we have a few placeholders in the budget just to identify specific projects or pieces of equipment in case they come to end of life. I believe that capital sheet identifies a 12-year useful life. So I'm not sure if that's what we were working on for this placeholder specifically, but if we have to move it to a later year or pull it because the current generator is still functional and well within its useful life, then we can do so closer to that date.
All right, thank you for that. Does anyone, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I just apologize to staff. I'd like to circle back to the comment that our CAO made in regards to the lighthouse discussion sooner rather than later. Is that something that you're proposing we discuss this evening, or is that something that we can have a higher level report come back to us in regards to? It is a placeholder for 2025. So if we're looking at ways to mitigate that large cost, I'm wondering when we should be having that discussion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. The discussion can at a high level be had tonight, or it could be a report at a later date. I fully expect that given the lack of word from the ISIP program regarding the scope reduction for this building, there will be a report on the SCC coming to a later council to advise of the program and some of the cost pressures that are now reemergent, given that we can't do construction in 2023. I suppose with respect to the lighthouse, we're going to have a discussion about how that gets funded, because normally staff wouldn't recommend using debt for non-core, particularly with the pressures coming up. We have no other funding mechanisms for this project. In fact, I think we only have maybe $10,000 left in the facilities reserve, even allocated to the lighthouse, because we saved a little bit on the stabilization. So 5,000, 10,000 on, 1.5 million is very little. There are a couple of grant opportunities. The most obvious one right now is the National Historic Sites. That's a cost sharing program for the federal government, but it's only up to $250,000. And the crux of that one is that to even be eligible, we have to identify where the rest of the funding is coming from. So whether that's debt or reserve or what have you, even if it's community-based fundraising, we have to have a number in hand when that application goes in. So that, as a 2025 item, gives us about a year to 14 months worth of runway to figure out what exactly that looks like if we're looking at it as a 2025 project. Aside from that, I know that I think, Lauren, it's the gas tax that could potentially be used for the lighthouse. The lighthouse qualifies, but we generally use the gas tax for core. So that wouldn't be something we'd recommend either. At this point in time, the only other option, and it may not even be viable at this point, would be repurposing, an existing grant down to that program in the south end to the lighthouse. And that isn't something that council has had a discussion on, but I suspect it might be in part of a report that's forthcoming to council.
Does that satisfy your question? I'm thinking that this deserves more
Yeah.
scrutiny than what we're going to have for this evening. It
Mhm.
has a placeholder in the budget. It's identified. I think unless council's going to change its priorities of retiring the $4 million debt,
Mhm.
then that's about where it's going to fall, I think. Yes, Council Pros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thomas, something you just referred to, SEC, you might be presuming that it's gonna go over, the cost is going up because we're having to wait?
Short answer is yes. So in discussion with A-Link, they've advised that based on what they're seeing for procurement recently, once we go to tender, all estimates are sort of, they're out of the question. It comes down to what the tendering cost is. They're seeing procurement in a range from 8% under budget to 30% over budget. And the reason why I bring this up is because about, 6 months ago, when we brought these last reports to council regarding the SEC, we had components of Parks and Playground Reserve, Contingency Reserve, Road Construction Reserve that we could potentially utilize for an overage. And we could also use part of OSIF and gas tax for strategic reallocation of projects to free up some funds. Now, recognizing that we have already allocated some of the Parks and Playground Reserve to the overage at the Vienna Community Park, we have already allocated part of the contingency reserve to the Port Burwell generator replacement. And we are up against what we now know to be approximately $15 million in upcoming waterworks that were otherwise unknown at the time. We don't have the upside risk mitigation financially that we had earlier this year. So I fully expect this to come back to council and report either the second meeting in October or the first meeting in November, identifying the current financial reality. The other component of that is that, and Lauren will allude to this in the Q3 financial report at the next meeting, that there is a higher probability that we run a deficit this year, given some cost pressures in functional areas, particularly some costs in building where revenues didn't come in, or in public works, we had storm damage that had to be rectified outside of the scope of the approved budget. This is eventually going to have to be funded out of the road construction reserve to balance out that amount. And that was not something that was contemplated or considered earlier this year when we brought that report forward. So again, that is another component weighing down on our ultimate financial position when it comes to non-core. All that to say that the ultimate funding envelope we have from a municipal perspective to fund our portion has shrunk.
Yes, Councilor Pros. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just thinking about the construction increases, if it goes up 15%, is this something that's going to come before council before we go to procurement?
So just a quick point is that we did the 2023 reestimate of cost to try to mitigate the upside risk. We can look at a 2024 reestimate of cost prior to procurement, but the intent is still, unless we have council direction otherwise, that we would be going to procurement over the winter for spring construction if we have approved scope reduction from the ISIP program. We wouldn't be bringing back a revised estimate prior to procurement. We would be going to procurement on previous council direction, and then the tendering results would come before council.
Okay. I think I got a little confused between procurement and tendering.
to clarify, the estimate comes before tendering, so that's what we base the financial plan for the project on. So we have that in place from early 2023. We bring a report forward in the fall identifying that there may be some additional cost pressures. If council wishes to go forward with the project, essentially we would do procurement through a tender process. And then once we have those results, once the tender closes, those results would come back to council and council would get to see what the ultimate bids were.
Can we move on? Planning.
117 on the big PDF, 102 on the capital sheet. Planning and development. We got the official plan review, PD 01, 25,024. That's funded from the levy. We had the zoning bylaw review, PD 02 in 2025. Carry over into 2026, a portion of it. And then we come up with our annual 4 and 5 year reviews of those in following worksheets. That's pretty much it from planning and development.
Again, no contemplation of reserving anything in the interim years to
For how small the financial it is, not like it's a piece of equipment where we're trying to smooth a 6-figure number. Generally, they're $30,000 to $40,000 expenditures.
okay.
And that brings us to the end of the 10-year capital.
Okay. Just to note again that the only departure is that we don't have a standalone capital profile, which is fine because it's covered under the building. All right.
I expect that we would look at just renaming building to bylaw, given that we provide bylaw but do not provide building services, just for clarity's perspective.
Yes. I think so. All right, does council have any questions on any of the budget items that you reviewed this evening? I think there's been good discussion. I think that a lot of during the course of the discussion, a lot of the questions have been answered. We do recognize that there are some challenges going ahead and a lot of unknowns, but still, this is establishing a plan in principle. So, Megan, do you want to give us a highlight of where we are at the moment?
So far, I have that report TR 14/23 regarding 2024-2033 capital budget draft be received for information. And that staff be directed to begin the procurement process for FD 05. And that staff be directed to report to council further on FD 06, PW 35, PW 29, and that council approve in principle the 2024 to 2033 capital budget with the following amendments. W 03 to be 17.5, PR 03 from 2026 to 2024.
Does everyone understand what those are? I think I do. Anything else that council wants to perhaps discuss or include in that? These are needs-based budgets, just to remind everyone. There's very little wants here. I'm sorry, Councilor Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we get to speak to some of the comments that were
If you wish.
brought in right now or after the motion, after we do?
If they're germane to how you might wish to address the budget, you might want to do it now. If it's something that you just wish to state. Like if it's going to change your opinion or what you're going to do with the capital budget.
No.
Then either do it now or do it later.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, given that the comments were included as essentially an attachment to the staff report, discussion can be had now.
All right. Sure.
If I may?
Yes.
The crosswalk. I know it's an Elgin County thing. What can we do to encourage this moving forward? Like, I'm being talked to on a daily.
Do you want me to answer that or do you want to answer that?
Floor is yours.
Okay, this is not the first time it's been before Bayham Council.
Mhm.
My guess is that if you escalated it to Elgin Council, or to Elgin County, that the Director of Engineering would probably go through his handbook and come back and say it's not warranted. But if you wish to do it, Bayham, go
Yes,
ahead,
I do.
and Bayham fund it.
Oh, wow.
That's what it will be. Counselor Chilcott.
Yeah, that's exactly what they'll say, because I've done that twice now.
Yep.
Plus, we've asked for stop lights. And they've said it's not required, that there hasn't been enough accidents there. Which leads me to believe you need to have more accidents in order to get something done. My next step was four-way stop. At the four corners there would slow things down a bit. I know they're not meant to be slowing traffic, but they will. And it's almost impossible to get around that corner sometimes nowadays.
Understood. It's not. They don't base the decision simply on accidents. It's the highway traffic manual, and depending upon the volume of traffic. And it is in a controlled area, meaning it's 50 kilometers. Okay, so all these things are taken into consideration. I'm not assuming the Director of Engineering's role here.
I know, but that's what they said. There
Okay,
haven't been
I've
enough
just-
accidents.
Yeah. But there are a host of conditions that have to be met in order to escalate to a certain level of traffic control measures. I'm putting it out there.
If I may suggest, we do approach Elgin again about the crosswalk.
All right.
And if they turn us down, would it be something council would be interested in is pursuing a price on what would it cost us? Or,
We can always escalate or investigate.
Right.
That's-
Absolutely.
There is a report.
Through your worship, or this might be a different crosswalk, just trying to remember, is this the one related to, no?
No, this is across from the public school here in Stratfordville on Plank
Okay.
Road.
Again, this was something that was explored quite some time ago. The report that came back from the commissioners, I believe, suggested putting a controlled crosswalk at Main rather than across from the school itself. Do you recall that? Yeah, Steve?
Through your worship, just to add a little context to that, you're correct. It has been looked at and they have received many letters from residents, from what I gather, about it. Ultimately, the mayor is correct. They will push back on council, Bayham's council for direction and what we want to do. Looking at the cost, so when it came to council, I can't remember either what year, but it was roughly around $30,000 to put a PXO in across from the school. This is just flashing lights that you see in normal town signage. The good news out of everything you've heard tonight is that's one thing that has gone down quite a bit. PXOs are put in now for about $18,000 to $20,000. Currently Elmer put a new one in just south of the Four Corners there, and that came in at roughly around 18,000. However, they did have hydro on site, so there is a lot to it. And I mean, if staff wants to, or council wants staff to bring something forward, I'd be happy to do it. Looking ahead at this. However, yes, in the TAC manuals, the traffic, the pedestrian volume will not warrant for this. So it is a little extra added, but that's council's decision.
You can always have the report come back if you want.
I think we're a small town here and we care about our people.
Yeah.
And let's get it done, I think so. But anyway, report would be nice.
I agree.
That's your overall omnibus. Sorry, it did change that. Sorry.
There's not an existing code for this. This is a new item.
I was just gonna speak through your worship. There is an existing code. My only two questions would be is we have our standard 100K a year for the sidewalk. Maybe council wants to have this as part of their sidewalk safety initiatives. The other thing is, and this is a question to you, worship. Does the county not have an annual sidewalk safety funding, or is there not upper levels that can be reached with the school boards in the province? Because I grew up in Summers Corners as a child, and I remember that horrific day very well. And that's a day that a lot of us didn't forget.
Understood.
So I just wondered if, I know at one time there was funding for that on Highway 3.
Well, again, it's something we'd have to look into, but I don't believe so. Steve and or Ed may be in a better position if they can recall anything available. It's MTO though. But that, you're right, that was MTO over Summers Corners. Yeah. Well then, okay, do you want to entertain that in a separate motion then outside of the budget then? Would that be a way to do it? It would be cleaner,
Yes, I was thinking that might be the best way.
all right? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a comment, I do like that creative thought from Lauren, something that we could consider in the sidewalk. Safety of community, like safety of place,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting conversation, but yeah, I
If council wants to direct it towards there, we have sidewalk, we have other stuff. I would strongly encourage it to be a capital item, not a operating item. But I have fielded some resident concerns there too. So I think
Well,
all members of council and staff have fielded it, and it's been looked at many times, so
okay.
safety of the community is important to me too.
But what I think is being discussed here, Lauren, is the fact that you have an allocation already, if approved, for sidewalk funding. And then council, if they choose, they could apportion some of that off for,
20K out.
but it's not an addition to the levy.
No.
It's just a reallocation.
Yeah.
So we can approve the budget with the amendments we have, then come back in with a motion, whether it happens today
Mhm.
or at a future meeting. Perhaps accompanied by a staff report, identifying the cost and maybe the avenues of, we've already approached the county or whatever else. And then reallocate. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you, Councilor Emerson? Okay. All right. Well, yeah, well, okay. Councilor Emerson, you got your hand up?
Yeah, just to circle back to this, I have a question about this whole procurement and tender thing. It's kind of bothering me. So because it was approved then through you, Mr. Mayor, to Thomas, because it was approved in 23, you could go ahead and start the procurement process, even though you know the cost is going to be substantially higher. And then when those tenders come in, we're therefore bound by it.
No, short
please.
answer is that now that we know we can't actually construct until 24, a report will be coming back to council with some of the additional implications from a funding perspective that council has to consider. And then council may provide any direction outside of what we currently have on this project. So if council wishes to pump the brakes on it, move forward with it, just cease it completely, we'd be looking for direction at that time. The reports that came forward in 2023 identified procurement and construction in 2023. So it would be well within the scope of operations to move forward with that if we projected that that was still possible. It is not at this point. So another report will come forward with some additional information within the next few weeks.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the clarification, Thomas.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one final comment to staff. And Lauren, thank you very much. As always, this exercise can be painful at times, but necessary. And I do recognize that our focus, or my focus as deputy mayor, is to eliminate that Ojibwa debt And I recognize staff effort in bringing that to fruition. And so, yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other additional comments or questions before we entertain the motion?
I only have one comment, your worship. I want to thank all department heads for their time and effort on pulling this comprehensive tenure. This is our most comprehensive tenure in our history at BAM. I'd also like to thank council for taking our numerous reports that have integrated into this tenure. And also like to thank both the CEO and clerk for making time and effort, both for getting the bus tours together with Public Works for council, so that way you guys understand how the tenure works, as well as making themselves accessible to department heads and myself as we went through this vigorous process. So it's a team effort here at BAM.
All right, thank you.
Here, here.
Seeing no additional questions or comments, we need a mover and a seconder for, you want to reiterate or everyone's still clear?
Well, I just wanted to touch base again for process on what would be best. I know we have a number of options, but when you speak about the sidewalk,
You're inside of them.
I would just leave it as is. I
Leave it
just
as
leave the
is.
100K as is.
I'm just wondering if under the section that I'm talking about, the staff be directed to report back to council, can I put that code about the sidewalk thing and then that covers it?
I would suggest to be done as a standalone motion, given that it isn't a capital item right now. Staff met with a staff report that investigates the costs and funding options for a crosswalk on Plank across from the Stratfordville Public School.
So
So then this capital budget motion is the same as before, but I can read it out if you'd like.
everyone's fairly clear. Do you want it reread? I need a mover and seconder then. Counselor Froze will move, Counselor Chilcott will second. All in favor of that adoption of the capital budget in principle with the amendments? That is carried. Thank you. Now, do you want to entertain a second motion at this time?
Say it again.
It would be, I'm gonna try to freestyle this, that staff investigate and report back to council on the costs and funding mechanisms for a crosswalk on Plank Road across from the Stratfordville Public School.
Are you moving?
Move.
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Weiser, seconded by Councilor Frode. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Which brings us to the bylaw. So confirming bylaw number 2023-074 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. We have a mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Weiser and Councilor Chilcott, all in favor. That's carried, which brings us to the adjournment motion. That council meeting be adjourned at, who's got a time? 8:56 p.m. Mover and seconder, Councilor Froze and Councilor Chilcott will move second. All in favor? Carried. Great. Thank you for everyone who joined us this evening, and thank you, Councilor Emerson, for remoting in. Certainly appreciate it.
Was
Hopefully,
fun.
The weather's fine out there.
Oh, it's hot, yeah. It's,
Perfect.
yeah.
Well, it's 8 degrees here, so yeah, it's great. Good.